We're going to be talking with an amazing gentleman that I met on Clubhouse. We've had lots of conversations. You're going to dig the shit out of him. He's real world. He's got an amazing backstory that we're going to learn about. He's a former police detective. He's a former hostage negotiator, former international peacekeeper. He has a crazy, crazy story. He's called the Chuck Norris of Clubhouse. If you guys are familiar with Clubhouse, go check it out. It's been great for restoring my faith in humanity. I just heard our friend who we had on the show, Forbes Riley, she was talking about it today. She had one of her best friends and co-publishers pass away from COVID. And she was talking about the fact that Clubhouse really has been her connection point for restoring her faith. And in times during COVID, when she was alone, it was one of those places where we all got to connect. And one of those places that we got to connect with is with this guy named Paul Nadeau. And he is just truly an amazing gentleman. He's gonna come in here and share with us real world strategies for really releasing the hostage within ourselves, because we do hold ourselves hostage, or sometimes we let other people hold ourselves hostage. But he is a former hostage negotiator, and he's a truly kick-ass dude. Welcome to the Unfiltered. It's Mr. Paul Nadeau. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Chris. How you doing? And Scott, nice to see you.
Pleasure. We got two Frenchmen here. We got Nadeau and Goyette.
Oui, c'est ça. On va parler français maintenant.
Yes,
solamente hablo un poco español, but my family speaks French.
Yo hablo español también.
Parlez-vous français?
Je parle français. Yeah, shwaya Arabi.
Are you guys done with your contest already?
Yeah, we're already starting, man.
Because I want to do one too.
Okay, what's yours?
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi? I guess I do speak
all right. This is where I have to tune out, guys. If you want to go to bed, that's good.
Yeah. Just do what you got to do. Just not here on my time.
All right. So since we're all guys here having a chat before we get serious, I used to tell women at the bar that I spoke French, and this is how stupid I was, but sometimes it worked. And they would say, "What kind of French do you speak?" And I was like, "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?" Whatever it was.
You just nailed it.
If they didn't know the song, they thought I spoke French, and it worked. They knew the song. They thought I was cheesy. If they thought I was cheesy, I had a 50-50 chance that they would dance with me or something like that. But most of the time they would just like, what the hell? And I said, you want to dance? And they're like, what? I'm not going to dance with you. And I said, no, you look fat in those pants. And I went on to the next girl. Yeah, baby. Yeah, we got some of the Unfiltered crew in the house tonight. We got Glenda says, hey, y'all. She's calling in. What's going on, Glenda? Good to see you here. We got Jacqueline Rose, the kick-ass, badass mother effer that she is. I mean, she's Irish. She's all up in the business about being a kick-ass. So thank you for being here, Jacqueline Rose. We appreciate you. Glenda says here, she goes, I know the world got more crazy.
Yes,
maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to, as Glenda says here, maybe it's for simplicity. So here's a question I have for you to start off the conversation, Paul. And thank you so much for being here. I know you're a busy guy. Given the last 18 months or so, I mean, almost, 2 years now, given what we've been through and the conversations that you've had from your perspective, with people that are struggling, and thinking about the topic of the show really being, how do we release our own hostage? What has been your experience in talking with people, both on Clubhouse, your coaching clients, everybody else? What has been your experience of what it seems like humanity is drifting towards, and how can we potentially start to alter that drift?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty still now. We're experiencing times that we, in our lifetime, most of us anyways, have not experienced. And there's a great deal of uncertainty. Along with uncertainty, we attach fear to it. And attaching fear to anything is a bad idea, because that fear can be crippling. It can prevent us from moving forward, from considering what our options are. What I found a lot of people are doing is that they're overlooking what they can control, and they're focusing on the things that they cannot control. For example, when COVID-19 first hit, a lot of people were concerned, of course, and rightfully so, that they might catch it, that they might pass away, that somebody that they knew might pass away. So those were real concerns. But it took its hold in such a gripping way that a lot of people forgot the things that they could control. For example, physical distancing being one, washing your hands being another, wearing a mask being another, and focusing on your life in the moment and not in what might be. And I think that that's one of the big things that people kind of fall back on, is that they're thinking of the things that are not within their control at the moment, and they're forsaking what they can control. So my conversations on Clubhouse have been a lot about that. It's about let's take a look at our time zones, because as you know, in Clubhouse, there's world time zones. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, right? That's how we greet ourselves, because we don't know what time it is in somebody else's world. However, in our own, there's the past, the present, and the future. And the past is something that has gone by and we cannot go back and change it. The future hasn't yet been written. We can write a great future for ourselves, but it still hasn't been written. What we can do is we can focus on this very moment as being one of the most important, if not the most important moment of your life. And it is for me. Why? I get to share this moment with you two great gentlemen on your show. How great is that? This present moment is amazing.
Yeah, I'm all with you, man. Or like, Chris and I talk about this all the time. I've been preaching mindfulness and getting on stages for years, talking about presence being the gift. The present moment is the gift. And so let's sit and talk about that for a minute, because one of the things that I see time and time again is when we tell people, embrace the present, a lot of people still don't totally understand what that means. Because I know when I'm sitting after a speech and, you're at the happy hour and somebody's saying, what do you mean mindfulness? I heard you, I get you, but I don't know that I fully get it. And so I'll say things like, what are you thinking right now? Are you here? Are you thinking about picking up your kids? Are you thinking about, did I pay the hotel room bill? Did I do, what are you really doing? So talk about some ways that people can become more present, and what does it mean to truly embrace this moment and not just be somebody worrying about the future or wishing they were in yesteryear of the past?
Okay. Yeah. And that's a wonderful question, Scott. Thank you so much for that. Well, I believe that each and every one of us have great opportunities every day to be the best version of ourselves, to step into our greatness. The problem is a lot of people don't think about that. So they start off their day by chance. As I woke up, okay, I'm going to clothe my body, eat a breakfast, go to work, and handle whatever bullshit comes my way, and just try to make the best of it so that I can wait for the weekend, have a few drinks, maybe go on that holiday once a year and just live this so-called life. What if we were to start our days off intentionally? And I'm going to get to the present moment in just a moment. But if we started our days off intentionally, number one, you wake up. I am grateful. Look, I've got a roof over my head, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got clothes on my back, and there's food in the fridge. So I'm pretty lucky. I've got people who love me. I get to go on shows like this. I get to live a life. I'm not in dire need of anything right now. So I am grateful. The moment you wake up, be grateful for what you have, for the fact that you woke up. That's a great start. The second thing would be to set your intentions and your mantras. What is my intention for the day? Well, Paul, you're going to have a fantastic day. And if I'm speaking for you, Scott, you'd look at yourself in the mirror and say, God, Scott, you're such a handsome dude. Things are going to go your way today. You're going to nail it. And I look at Christopher. If I were sitting in your shoes, do the same thing. Hey, Chris, you're such a good thing's going your way. Nothing is going to step in my way and make my day any worse. It's not, because this is a great way for me to start it. So that's how we set our mantras for the day, by being intentional. And I tell people there are two closets in our mind. I'd like you to visualize two closets. On the one side of your mind is this very dark closet. It is filled with regret, shame, loss, whatever it is that you went through in the past. That door, that closet door, should stay closed. Problem is, we poke our face into it every once in a while. It's like being in a horror movie and the door is knocking and knocking and knocking, and some people go, well, let me open it. No, that's a horror film.
Right.
Hey,
You know what's going to happen.
you do. Ever seen some of those horror movies where a family just walks or buys a house? They go, isn't this beautiful? And then all of a sudden, if there's ghosts coming from everywhere, what do? They don't pack up and leave. They try to figure it out. And then one by one, they're killed. So that closet, I do not want to step into. The closet I want to step into is the closet of beautiful attitude. And that is a brilliant closet filled with beautiful garments. So you pick that attitude for the day. I pick servitude. I pick love. I pick hopefulness. I pick whatever beautiful garment I can wear on the inside. Then I pick my outer clothing. Now, how does that serve the moment? You've already prepared yourself for the moment. That exercise that you did in that morning ritual of yours that took, 5 minutes? 6 minutes, maybe.
Mhm.
Maybe you want to do a little bit of meditation too. Wouldn't that be great to start off your day? So that prepares you for the moment. Somebody cuts you off. You've already set your mindset that nothing is going to get in my way. You may get that flinch just for a moment and go, you know what? I remind myself, nothing's going to get in my way. I've got this. And so living in that moment without the fear of uncertainty is what people ought to do. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. We've got it. Why? We told ourselves we did in the morning. We exercise that. We do whatever it takes to build that muscle within ourselves to handle whatever comes our way.
No, thank you, dude. I was looking at Scott because Scott knows that all the time I talk about that. It's so crazy how you and I think a lot alike, Paul. Every time we talk, it's crazy because I say the same thing. It's like the first time when I wake up before my eyes open, it's what I'm grateful for. And the next set is intentions. It's so amazing because I caught myself, back when I was in corporate, I'd wake up and go, oh, fuck. God, I wonder what today is going to be like. And you think about that. You're like setting the intention. You're setting the reticular activation system in your brain to go, I'm going to seek out all of those things which I believe to be true. And you're absolutely right. When we reset that focus, it's so crazy because when I do that, then during the day, what I ask myself is that additional question is this getting me closer to or further from what I stated to be my intention this morning? So if I'm sitting there almost being frustrated with my son, I set the intention today to be present and playful with him. If I'm going to get frustrated with him, maybe I need to go to the bathroom, take a couple of breaths and come back out there. So that's the added component of that. It's just checking yourself and saying, hey, like you said, you get that moment, you go, okay. And so here with the before we get to the next question, I just want to acknowledge some people. We got Ben Hayden in the house. What's up, Ben?
Hey, Ben.
Boys? Love to you all. Ben is our dear friend. He's also our web designer and just an amazing soul. I had a great conversation with him yesterday. Yes, we're so thankful Ben is here. And Jacqueline says everybody wants to change the world, but do not want to change themselves because they live in fear.
Yes.
Well said. Right there.
We're going to be talking about that. Ben says, intentionally, wow, make us think, wake us up. Thank you. Yeah, you got to be intentional with what it is that you're going to do. I mean, geez, it's so funny also because we try so hard to own our life and we have all these big, massive dreams and everything, but we don't decide to own the day. And I read this book by Marcus Aubrey, How to Own the Day. And I was like really taken aback because I'm like, owning the day, whatever, a big deal. I'm going to own the whole thing. But really, if you wake up and you say, listen, I'm going to own today because today is what I have. Back to your comment before, we have moments. And I'm convicted of all the time talking about how many different moments that we have and to be in those moments. And I force myself to be in those moments. But tell us about your journey. Because I think this is important for now that we got people joining us, whether you guys live or on the replay. Thank you guys so much for being here on the Unfiltered experience. So talk to us a bit about your journey, because I've heard parts of your journey, but I would love for everybody to know this beautiful human being that's sitting in front of us, who's very articulate and very knowledgeable. I watched your TEDx speeches. You're an author of books. I mean, you are a tremendous individual. You've had a lot of experience, but I know part of your backstory, and I think that's super important for people to kind of dig into to see where you've been and where you're at now. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure, Chris. Before I do, I just want to set out a few trigger warnings. There is a lot of violence. There's a lot of domestic violence in the story that I'm about to tell you. So if violence and domestic violence triggers you, it might be a good idea not to remain tuned in for at least 2 or 3 minutes and then tune in afterwards. I was raised by a very violent alcoholic father who used to take out his frustrations for how his life turned out on us children. When I say us children, my older brother, myself, and my mother as well. And the beatings were severe. And my father, he just was not capable of love. That's what I understand it to be. He had been abused himself just as badly, if not worse, than he abused his children and abused his wife. So it was regular. It was expected to get beatings and severe beatings. And I remember my dad did all kinds of terrible things, like he'd bring kittens into the garage that he had collected from across the neighborhood. And in front of me, he would say that the population of the cats in the neighborhood were too big and that we had to do something about it. And so at the age of 6 and 7, I watched him mutilate, kittens in front of me. He used to lock me in a trunk of a car and drive me for hours locked in this trunk. And one day when I was about 7 years old, he took me out of the trunk. We were in this farm land, and there was an old house in front of me. And I remember stepping out of the trunk, and by his side, terrified. The thing was spooky looking to start with. It was a summer's day. And I could hear babies crying from the house, behind the house. And it wasn't just one baby, it was several babies. And I was so terrified and frightened. And I remember just clutching onto his pant leg as he started walking towards the house. Now, we didn't go to the front entrance of the house. We went towards the back of the house where the cries were coming from. And there was this big cement garage that the cries were coming from. And I remember as I was getting closer, the cries were getting louder and louder. And then finally we got to the door, and here's a 7-year-old me, terrified. And my father opens the door and pushes me on the inside. And what he had taken me to was a slaughterhouse. There were pigs hanging from the ceilings being slaughtered and butchered right in front of my eyes. And I don't know whether he was trying to toughen me up, or if he just wasn't thinking, or if he was that ill. And so I just remember seeing this. Again, the number 7 really plays a significant, piece in my life, because it was at the age of 7 that I remember lying on the floor after one of the beatings and looking up at my father and thinking to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to be a policeman so I can arrest you and people like you. And I really felt that was a feeling in me that I wanted to see through. When I was in grade 7, and I never believed in myself. Number one, my father never told me anything that was inspiring or anything that would hold me up. In fact, he was always disciplining me or punishing me for things that kids do. And my teachers back then, I was going to a Catholic school, and they weren't supportive either, because here's Paul. I am the bad boy of school because that's the only place that I can act out was in school. However, acting out in school in a Catholic school back in the 60s meant I used to get strapped. I used to get a ruler across the hands or even whacked on the behind. You know, that was me every week getting disciplined this way and being told by my teachers, the people who should support you, saying, you're never going to amount to anything. You're just a piece of wasted space in this class, Paul. And those were the teachers back then. Those were my teachers back then. And I did not believe in myself, because when you are told lies and when you are told you are a certain way or that you're not significant or you don't matter, if you allow those thoughts to take over your mind, you can start to believe those lies. And for me, I was conditioned not to believe in myself. Now, something happened in grade 7. Again, I'm bringing the number 7 out. In grade 7, there was a teacher, and he announced to the entire classroom, he said, we're going to have a test next week, and I expect everybody here to pass, except for you, Nadeau. I already know you're going to fail. Now, I'm in grade 7. I'm starting to like girls, and for the first time, I think I felt so humiliated. Now, I had been laughed at, I had been bullied, but this was a moment in time that just hit me to the core. I felt so ashamed. I went back home. I did something that weekend that I had never done before, other than the fact that I cried most of the weekend. I opened the books and I started to try to focus and study something I wasn't familiar with, because I never applied myself to do it. So I locked myself in that room. I cried, I studied. I went the next week, I wrote that test, and I had those two competing voices in my head. The one voice saying, you know the answers, Paul, you're doing good. And the other one saying, oh, no, you're going to fail, just like you always do. And we have those competing voices. Which one do we feed? Well, I was feeding the one of loss, regrettably, that I was afraid that I wasn't going to pass this test. I wrote it, handed it in. A couple of days later, as was customary, this teacher used to call out the student with the lowest grade to the front of the class. And I want to give you guys one guess who that person usually was. Can you think?
You.
Yes, that would be right. You got it. Number 1, 100%. Way to go. So I'm waiting, and I'm getting out of my chair just as the first name is being called, and it's not me. So I sit back down. Second one, I'm getting ready. No, it's not me. Third one, fifth one, 10th one. Out of a class of 20, 25 kids, I'm not being called halfway through. My classmates are looking over at me and going,
what the hell happened?
Yeah, and I'm going, know. I don't know. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. Again, those competing voices. Number one, you passed this, dude. You passed this. I think you did good. And the other one's saying, oh, you know what he's going to do? He's going to humiliate you so much. He's going to make an example of you, and he's going to take you and he's going to rip you apart. And I'm thinking, oh no, what's going to happen? Comes down to three people. My cousin Lise, who was a sweet genius, and another girl by the name of Giselle. Those two used to compete for the highest grade in school. And me, I'm in the middle of these girls. And the next person to be called up was my cousin, leaving Giselle and I to be called. And then I was called. And I got the second highest grade that day. Yes. And that's how I received it. I received it. And I walked up, and I'll tell you guys, it used to be the walk of shame. I took that paper and I held it so close with the biggest smile on my face. It's like, I thought it was like I was winning an Academy Award or something,
Right.
but it was a pivot point. It was a pivot point for me that in grade 7, I thought to myself, if I can do this, what else can I do? And from that moment on, I challenged myself to remind myself that I was worthy. And what I say is to take my mind and remind it. I reminded myself into believing that I can take on everything. And what happened? The age of 17, my father killed himself, so I didn't get to arrest him. The age of 21, I joined the police department. I got in. 7 years later, I joined the detective branch, became a detective, went in and started saying, what else do I want to do? Well, I want to work in major crimes. I want to be the investigator in sexual assaults and child abuse in what we call the specialized unit. And so I became a detective working in a specialized unit. Then I became a hostage negotiator. And then I went to the Middle East on a peacekeeping mission. And then. It was just like, what else can I do? Because I believed to myself, I can do it. And I have accomplished. And that's my story.
It's amazing.
What do you think of that, Scott?
It's
I told you.
Yeah.
I told you.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, it's
Dude, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I know, and thank you for doing the trigger warning too. We do that in Clubhouse a lot. I don't do it on here a lot. So thank you for reminding me of that. But wow, what a tremendous story. And it literally sounds like you rewrote the program that was going on in your brain. You rewrote the reticular activation system to say, listen, now I'm going to focus on this. Like you said about the closets. Scott, I know you got some stuff on this.
No, I just think it's, again, we always talk about the cycles of life and the little taps that the universe gives us. And like, we get these lessons like, hey, here's a lesson. Very few of us can learn from a tap. Even the punch to the arm, we usually don't learn. Even the full elbow to the face with our nose bleeding, it takes a freight train for most of us. And that's why we see patterns occur again and again and again in families where the dad does something, the kid does it. And the beautiful thing here is that at age 7, you're laying there, not only recognizing that the cycle, the buck stops here, you're saying that you already got a game plan. Like, I'm going to be a police officer in your head. And the other beautiful thing is recognizing that awakening moment in 7th grade where you're just like, if I can do this, I can do anything. And everyone needs to listen to that, because we could just sit here and go, it was just a test. That's what we do to ourselves all the time. We sit in that door, that closet going, well, I got lucky. Like, we can sit here and not realize this is my moment. I'm on the pedestal. I can come here every single day, like you said, with intention. Every day I can become present with intention and say, this is who I am, not that door. It's this door. And so I heard you loud and clear. Every day we've got to open that door. It's our choice. Get in that present moment. I think it's incredible. I love it. I love it. I think it's beautiful. So
thanks, Scott. And I love what you said, Chris, too, about the reprogramming. I'm thinking of the movie Matrix, where you just call for a program. Hey, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. Here's a program. Pop it in. How about I want to learn how to be courageous. I want to learn how to be confident. Here's the program. It's up to you. It's in you now. And it is. All these talents are within each and every one of us. Yes. I think it was Jacqueline or one of your listeners was saying, the fear is a thing that is holding us back. How do we beat that thing called fear? And that is such a wonderful question, because fear is a feeling that can be defeated. And I know myself, there have been times where I was afraid for my life. And yet I looked at it and said, okay, this could happen. But if I focus on that, I'm going to be missing what I can control. Again, what is it that you can control? What is it that you can't control? Let's not worry about what I can't control. What can I control right now? I'm afraid. Chris, you said it. Those 2 deep breaths. Here we go.
A lot.
Yep. This is like on Home Alone when little Kevin says, as he's, this is it. Don't get scared now. When the bad guys are coming, you got to say, this is it. Don't get scared now. You can do this. You're ready. If you're prepared, you're ready. How do you get prepared? You prepare your mind in the morning. That's preparation, folks. That's like getting ready for the big meal. You're preparing everything. You're putting it all together. When that fear comes, you've already prepared. You know what you're going to do. Why? Because you programmed yourself. You put that matrix program in and you said, I got this. And you step in and you have got it.
That's
You're not passionate
right
about this, are you?
No. You know what? Just wait until I'm passionate about this.
Oh, I'm going to get you fired up. I'm going to get you fired up.
Give me the man.
I want to take some comments here real quick and give you guys a chance to get a drink. Ben Hayden says, Chris is double fisting drinks. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, one of them is a creamsicle martini. So that's a creamsicle martini in honor of Ben. And then this one is vodka. That's a full bottle of vodka. No, that's my water. I'm just giving Ben some shit. We're glad you're here, Ben. We're glad you are rocking and rolling. I had a great conversation with him the other day. Glenda says, this like lesson to Chris and Paul are twins. We're twinsies. We're all twinsies. We all have great mindsets. Glenda says the only way to change the world is to work on your attitude and to work on self and be the person you want to be and being positive. Glenda's been with us for quite some time here, a part of the Unfiltered experience. We have watched your growth, Glenda, and I'm just so proud of you to see your perspective shift over the last year, the 18 months of where you've been and where you're at today. I applaud you, woman. I applaud you. Angel says here, yep, a little hard on my soul. She'll be right back. Totally understand, Angel. Angel's awesome. She's a big supporter of this show and also the Raw and Unscripted show. And just put me in contact with a great person to have as another guest on the show. So thank you, Angel, for that. I made contact with Alexis today. Thank you. We got Robert in the house saying, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Robert. Thank you so much for being here. He's always here on Friday nights. We appreciate your patronage here on the Unfiltered experience. I have to tell you, I have 2 shows. We have the Unfiltered experience and I have Raw and Unscripted. On the Raw and Unscripted show, I opened the show and I said, hi, this is the Raw and Unscripted Unfiltered experience. I combined, I set them like interchangeably.
We've done that a few times where I had the wrong back screen out. There's too many things going on.
I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And Glenda says, this is to you, Paul. I so get it, Paul. And Ben says, he's got a question here. He goes, oh my gosh, what was your turning point, Paul? I think that 7th grade experience, right?
That was my turning. That was my pivot point. And that was the moment that I started to believe in myself. Remember, people are going to say things to you and not everything that you hear is the truth. Oh, yes. A lot of people are bullies. Hurt people hurt people. Healed people heal people. Mm-hmm. I was healed. That trauma that I experienced in my past, I left it in my past. If I go to visit it, it's just to remind myself of how I graduated from that. And things don't always happen to you. Sometimes they happen for you. Now, how could this abuse have happened for me? Let me ask you that question. When I asked myself how it could have happened for me, had it not been for the suffering that I endured at the hands of my father and the insults that I took from my teachers or whatever, maybe I wouldn't have become a cop. If I wouldn't have become a cop, I wouldn't have saved so many lives. I wouldn't have been the person I am today. I don't know where I'd be. So that happened for me. And when we take a look at some of the events that have happened in our life, let's ask ourselves that question. Who have I become? Or how have I changed? How have I strengthened from what I've gone through? And Rocky says it so well in his speech to his son. Doesn't matter how many times you are knocked down to the mat, how many times you get hit, and how many times you go down. What matters is how many times you get back up, and you don't blame anybody. You just keep on moving forward. And so that was the pivot point for me, was believing myself in myself in grade 7, and then reinforcing that belief with every achievement I got And even afterwards, the books behind me, you're writing the books, writing a film script, all these things, they're whispers, Scott. You talked about whispers a little bit earlier. The thing, yes, exactly. Glenn Morshower, who is an actor and a very good friend of mine on Clubhouse, he calls them whispers. So yeah, thank you.
And so that's like, I love where you're going with that too. And that's how I see all this disarray in the world right now. Is we've been getting the taps, we've been getting the whispers collectively. And here's the thing, if we're going to make an amazing shift in the collective, the only way we're going to do that is through individual freight trains. And so to your point, how could this be happening to me? Okay, how many times did you have an opportunity to learn that lesson in a more gentle way and you just didn't do it? I mean, what about your dad and his dad or whatever brought that behavior to this halt with you? There were a lot of tap opportunities, I guarantee you, throughout the ages of my family and your family. And we're experiential learners, us crazy humans, you know? And so many of us, we just wait to the freight train. And so what we're seeing right now, I think, you know, with COVID and all these shifts and these opportunities to pivot, it's nothing more than individual freight trains hitting us saying, we're going to wake up together. And yeah, it feels crazy and we can call it a new normal or how are we going to manage this? Here's how we're going to manage it. We're going to go to that correct closet. We're not going to keep going back to the other one. We're going to wake up. It's going to be messy and we're going to find peace in the chaos. And it doesn't happen instantaneously. It takes a little bit of time, but we know where that closet is and we're going to open it and we're going to continue to open it with intention every day. And when somebody hears you or Chris or myself, that this is what we're doing, we're going to be that light. So other people say it's a freight train, but it's a freight train that's going to teach me some damn important lessons and it's for me. And so I think that's the collective message we've got to share with everybody right there. And you nailed it in being intentional and doing it, you know, with that closet. I'm going to keep using that analogy. It's perfect. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Scott. And I just want to kind of piggyback on what you said. So many important things that you just touched on. You touched on the fact that we have choice. That 6-letter word, choice. I get to choose. When you were speaking, it reminded me of Viktor Frankl, Viktor Frankl wrote the book, and I'm sure you gentlemen, you have it. I know you do.
My shoulder, but I'm reading it again. It's actually in my bedroom nightstand. It's usually right there, dude. Swear to God, Paul, it's right there.
It's all right.
I'm reading it.
Yeah. It's Man's Search for Meaning, in which Viktor Frankl says that between stimulus and response, there's a moment. And in that moment, we get to choose how we respond to what happens to us. And I'll tell you, we are lucky here in North America, are we not? Regrettably, so many people are, it seems that there's so much division in our countries right now. People are divided against each other. But let's take a look at Afghanistan for a moment. We've seen those horrific videos of so many Afghan people trying to jump on a plane that's taking off and dropping to their death. Why are they trying to leave that country to come to ours so desperately? It's because we got it pretty good. Problem is, we don't see it because we're living right smack down in the middle of all this. But we do have a choice, folks. We have a choice, and that choice is to make the very best of whatever is given our way because we get to. We can.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Ooh. I want to get some comments here, and then I'm going to ask you another question. I want to go dig a little deep and before we move forward. So thank you. Let's see. I think Ben had a comment up here. Let's see, where did it go? Let's see, where did it go? Sometimes I can't see, right? Oh yeah, here it is. Ben says here, thank you for being you. You are an inspirational to realize at a young age what needs to change, how to set your goals and achieve them. We need more people like you. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben. Robert says here, embrace it. Robert says also, hey, what's up? Glenda says, thank you for what said Chris. You were most welcome, obviously. So it's funny when you were mentioning sevens. As you were talking, Paul, I don't know if you were doing this, Scott, but I realized 7th grade was when when I dropped out. Mm-hmm. I was 17 years old when I got my shit together and decided I wasn't going to go to jail or in a cardboard box. And then at 27, I was thinking about this. I'm like, oh, I only got 2. But then I remember at 27, that was like my best year. It was like I figured myself out. I was about to graduate I was in my master's program, I think. I was in the process of trying to buy a house. My corporate career was going good. And I just remember 27 was like the kick-ass year. I don't have any sevens after that, I don't think. But it's crazy how you mentioned that. But I want to go back to, okay, so 7th grade, you start to realize, turn the corner on yourself, but you still have another few years, if I remember right, I can't do the math, with your father. What changed from that point and when you were in the 7th grade to the time when your father passed? Did things change? Did you start to stand up to him? Did it stay the same? What shifted for you in that relationship?
Yeah, not too much, regrettably, not too much. My father, the beatings got less as I got into my teen years. And I think that I must have graduated. I don't know what it was, or he was slowing down. But the relationship was, I was always his favorite. Go figure. And, and as his favorite, I was trying to please him so much. And there was still that fear in me that I had to outgrow. And, but from all the things that he put me through, guys, again, I'm looking back at that and saying those things happened to me, but they also happened for me, because he sent me out when I was about 13, 14 years old to find a job so I could pay room and board. And I learned how to speak to adults and get jobs like that. I learned how to really be self-sufficient. And I think I'm striking a chord with you, Chris, because you had to go through the same thing. When you're out on your own and you need to prove yourself to yourself and to everyone else, you step up, or you should step up to the game, or you won't win. And so I really had to challenge myself. So I was never without a job. At the age of 16, I had cash to buy a car, and I had jobs. And guess what? I was delivering prescription drugs when I was 16 with hair down to my shoulders. Why? I asked for the job. And I started working on a suicide hotline when I was 19.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so I just stepped up to every challenge and said, I can do this. And I gained that confidence of being able to communicate with adults. And I believe that also, no, I know that. I'm going to change that. It's not only a belief, it is a fact that has helped me to communicate with people, which made it easier for me to become a police officer, which made it easier for me to actually get a witness or a victim of crime to tell me what had happened to them, even the horrific details, or to walk into a room in which somebody was accused of murder and have that person tell me that they did commit the murder. So all these lessons that we think, oh, poor me, I'm going through this. No, it's not poor you. It's like, what lessons I'm at? Yeah, there you go. Right there. That is correct. So yeah, you know what? The relationship changed. I sensed something horrific, before my father passed away. I just had this very bad feeling it was going to happen, and sure enough, it did.
Mm.
Can I go back to something that you said, Paul? Because I just got a feeling when you said it. You said that you were his favorite. We live in the in the ego and the mind so much, and I'm sure you're a believer of the whole idea of alignment and really just living in the heart. What if your dad was actually smart enough to realize in his heart of hearts, or in his spirit, and realize that what he's doing to you and the reason you're the favorite is you are the one who's going to break this cycle? And it might be the most amazing gift where, the sacrificial lamb, that he's sitting here going, I get it. I suck. I get it, because my dad left when I was a year old, and he was never in my life. And at first, people like, oh, aren't you mad that he left? What a deadbeat dad. And I'm like, but that him leaving was what made me able to, break. Like I had to, either he had to do something really bad or leave, not just kind of go through the motions. Cause I go, that's what it's like to be a dad. So not having that there was an amazing gift. And people call him like a bad person. I'm like, no, the best gift you ever gave me was not being there. So I just wanted you to think about that. Cause when you were speaking and I was like, he's you're the favorite. I bet he saw that in his own heart, that you were going to be the one to break these cycles and help break the cycles for others in doing the things you do with police work and everything else, suicide hotline and all that. So,
Scott, I love what you just said. I will add this as far as I'm like my story. I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we all turned out great. My one brother is a lawyer. My other brother's a pastor. And both my sisters work with healing the elderly and serving the elderly. So we all broke that pattern. But I love what you said about maybe in his mind, he was training me for so much more. And I don't know. I can't read his mind. but you struck something in me that I'm going to have to reflect on. Thank you, Scott, for that.
Yeah, because like you said, there's always a lesson in everything. We know that, but sometimes in teaching everybody else, we teach everybody else all the other lessons, and somebody has to mention something to us. I'm like, damn, that actually makes sense. So.
Yeah, you go squirrel. What?
Squirrel? What?
What?
Well, yeah, that could be.
There you go.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you said before, is the choice. And what I want to do now, because Scott, you just asked the question that I was going to ask, is what's your relationship now with your brothers and sisters? Do they turn out as well? So we got that answer. So a lot of what Scott and I talk about on the show is like, not dealing with the symptoms of situations, right? Often we diagnose them. Oh, I'm going to deal with the symptom. We go to the doctor, they deal with the symptom. They don't really deal with the root cause. In your opinion, your experience, and thinking about going back to the childhood conditioning that we all go through, and thinking about what you said about the caretakers. I talk about it all the time. Like, our caretakers were supposed to take care of us, but those were the individuals that taught us the biggest lessons. And we can choose to either be a victim of those lessons and go, oh, poor me. See, this is why I am, and I have all these excuses. Or we can dig into the root cause of the problem and extract that root and be able to, like you said, reframe our perspective about our past to say that it happened for us and not to us. What do you think? What can we do to help the viewers and the listeners, whether listening live or on the replay or on the podcast? What can we do to help them start that journey of being able to be aware, to be accountable, and to start taking action on what it is that they can do to unfuck themselves?
Oh, what a great question, Chris. And I'm going to start off by saying something that I talk about in my book, and it's just about self-examination.
Right.
We need the Socrates said that a life, how did he put it? An unexamined life is a life not worth living. Well, it really is a duty of ours to examine our life, where we've been, where we are, and where we want to be. And so when I examine the past, that's where I've been. And I do not dwell on the past, because to me, dwelling on those past hurts, the things that happened to me, and I'm not kicking therapy. It's so very important, where I couldn't go back and just relive the experience, have a therapist just say, well, let's dissect this a little bit longer. For me, no, I do not want to. I see what happened. I recognize what I can take from it, and I'm going to leave it there. I do not want to pack my bags and go to the Poor Me Hotel, where if I check in, there's the Why Me Lounge in the Poor Me Hotel. And the Why Me Lounge, they give 2-for-1 drinks, and they're dirty, man. And you can stay in that Why Me Lounge all night. It never closes. Just like the Hotel California, you can never leave. Well, some people don't leave that Poor Me Hotel. I don't want to do that. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to just kind of focus on those things, again, that I can control in the moment. If you're going to examine your life, write down on a sheet of paper 2 columns. On the one column, what is it that's not going right? Or what is it that I'm worried about? All these things. And on the other side, examine what is going well and celebrate the things that are going well in your life. So do examine your life. Do it once every 2 weeks. Sit down. What's not going right? It might be a relationship. And maybe that's time for you to take a real close examination of you. Am I being a freaking idiot here? Is the reason this relationship not going well because of me? Do I need to step up and do something differently? Must I change in order to have what I want? So be so brutally honest with you. Do I need to change something in order to get what I want? I can wish upon a star. Remember that little song, Twinkle, Twinkle? I don't know.
I sing it every night.
That's it. You wish upon a star and all
My
these,
son.
all the fairy tales come true. No, they don't. You can wish on a star all you want, but unless you take the action to get what you want, it's only going to be a wish upon a star, and it's going to fall from the sky. You want to reach up for the stars. How do you do that? You reach. You reach deep down into yourself and say, who must I become? What must I do to have this relationship, this job, this courage, this confidence? What must I do? And so that is self-examination. So for any of your listeners who are struggling with why they are not in a state of happiness, or they don't have the right job, or don't have the right relationship, whatever it is, examine thyself, ask thyself what it is that you need to do to change that. And remember, you get to choose your mindset. You get to reset your mind. You get to remind your brain. And to remind your brain is saying, I've got this. Remember what I talked about that? Starting your day with confidence. I've got this, no matter what comes my way. Because remember, nobody in this earth, of these 7 billion or 8 billion people, nobody deserves love, happiness, respect more than you. Not one person. Not one person is more worthy or deserving of you. You've got to self-love yourself. You've got to tell yourself that's true. And when you set that little shift in your mind to start believing in yourself, wow, having confidence is pretty sexy. When you walk into a room and you say, hey, how you doing? And you're not overconfident, but you're confident in yourself. That means you can walk up to someone of the opposite sex and start a conversation. You can go up to that person who's looking for an employee and say, I have someone in mind, and that person is me. You can have that confidence. It makes all the difference in the world. So examine your life would be my short answer. I just gave you my long one.
So I love what you're saying here, Paul, too, because I think a lot of people are waiting for that magic moment. They're waiting for it, and they don't realize that the magic's inside of them, and they create that moment. You created it in 7th grade, and they might be listening right now. Somebody's hearing going, yeah, but, I can hear you. There's something different in you. You're different than me. People like to say that, say everybody's different. And it's this simple. You know this as well as I do, and so does Chris. If you think you're confident, if you're confident and you think you're amazing, you're right. If you're lacking confidence and you think you suck, you're right. It's that simple.
Henry Ford.
Your mind creates it. Those are the 2 doors. And so I just want people to really hear that loud and clear. Your moment was self-created. You're talking about the fact you did that with the test. Somebody can create that magic starting right now. It's their choice. You don't have to wait and say, I don't know. Tomorrow, set your intention. Do exactly what you're saying. You nailed it. So thank you for that, because I think all of us need to hear that. And actually, I do have a question of one thing that you said in there that I do want to get an answer. What do you think about, I know you're not like denouncing therapy, and I'm right there with you. Like there's something for everybody. Do you just think it's different with everybody? Because some people like to take that deep dive and do the full analysis of all their stuff. Like you, I can look at it and say, that's behind me. I'm going to the other closet. I'm totally with you. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I going to go do that? And some people swear that that's the healing process. What do you think about that? Is it just different with everybody, or? Oh,
I do believe, Scott, and what a worthy, wonderful question, because I do believe that it's different for everybody. It's where you're at in your mind. And I'm not knocking therapy. I think it's amazing. I just, when I hear people have been in therapy for years, I have to step back and go, so you're
choosing to be a victim.
Yes, you're going back, and the doctor's taking you through the killing of the kittens over and over and over again. How many times must I see those kittens being killed in front of me for me to realize that this is not a good place for me to be? That's a room I want to step out of and leave behind where it belongs. So it's different for everybody. And remember, there are so many different therapies for people. There's music therapy. There's exercise therapy. There is going on Clubhouse therapy. There is having this podcast with you great guys therapy. It's all these things that if one thing doesn't work for you, it's okay. And maybe the therapist that you're talking to isn't the right one. Go on to find somebody who is. And remember one thing too, folks. I love the movie Good Will Hunting, and Robin Williams and Matt Damon. And Matt Damon has been the victim of such abuse at the hands of abusive foster father. He blamed himself for the things that happened to him. And so many people are walking around carrying this blame, is that if I would have been a nicer boy, if I would have been a nicer girl, if only I would have done this, if only I would have done that. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Ooh, to that point, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that since it's right here, but then I have another question for you. Talk about that process of forgiveness. Talk to us about that process of forgiveness of ourselves and what we might have thought we can blame ourselves for. Maybe because I was a bad kid, my dad treated me wrong. Talk to us about that forgiveness process and the surrendering of that guilt.
Yeah, blame and shame is they are two big enemies. They're like two terrible wolves, blame and shame.
Oh yeah.
Well, listen, folks. You're not the person that you were a week ago. You're not the person you were 5 years ago. We are imperfect people living in an imperfect world. We're going to make mistakes, and we are going to have to take a look at those mistakes and say, yes, I accept accountability for that, but I am not that person anymore. I am standing on the shoulders I was yesterday. I'm standing on the shoulders of the person I was, and the person and the person and the person. I have evolved. There are no failures in life. There are simple graduations. Is it okay? You know what? That was a rough one, and I need to shake my head. I was not the person I should have been, but let me not blame and shame myself. Let me just become stronger as a result of that. I see it. And I am reminding myself that I am a better version of the person I was just yesterday. And if I'm going to compare myself to anybody, compare me to me yesterday. Yep. Am I a better man than I was? Yep.
Ooh.
Love it.
Yeah. Love it. Paul, I want to be respectful of your time. We usually go about an hour, but I have a few more questions. Is it okay just to keep going just for a little bit?
Absolutely, man. I'm here.
Okay. So I'm thinking about this. You know, it seems like, okay, after you made this decision in 7th grade, you're like, if it turned your life around, you shifted your perspectives, you became a police detective, became a hostage negotiator, international peacekeeper. I'm certain you have been in some pretty stressful situations, some pretty fearful situations as an adult that potentially could trigger the kid in you to resurrect some of those feelings. Talk to us about a time in your life where you had to really put all of these tools to test as an adult of what you decided to learn as a kid.
Great question.
Oh, that is a great question. Well, you know,
you get those every once in a while.
Yeah, you know what? We do, don't we? And let's celebrate. Remember that
stupid, like, oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
I ask stupid questions that I don't even understand myself. Honestly, I'll tell Scott afterwards. I'm like, dude, I asked them a question that I don't even fucking know what I was asking him.
No, they're always good questions. You know what it is? It's that they're always good questions. Sometimes they're just a little more smoothly articulate, but when you listen to it, they're always good. They're always good.
Thank you. So I want to hear the answer on this one.
All right. I'm going to take you back to 2005 when I was on a peacekeeping mission just outside of Iraq in Jordan at the Jordanian International Police Training Center. The United Nations had gone and asked for peacekeepers, and I signed up. I wanted to do my part to fight terrorism, and Canada did not send soldiers to the war. We sent peacekeepers. My job originally was to work and train Iraqi police officers. We had 3,000 police cadets come through our academy every 8 weeks. We had Sunnis and Shiites, but we also had terrorists. So terrorists had found a way to easily infiltrate the police academy because Iraq could not vet the police officers, the applicants, fast enough. Imagine 3,000 every 8 weeks, throwing them back in the streets so they can police and hopefully bring their country to peace. Now, with the terrorists who had infiltrated the academy, they also had a mission, and that mission was to kill internationals. After I did the training aspect of it, I applied for a job as an advocate and counselor, and I got the job of about 20 internationals. I was the one selected to do this job, along with one other fella. It's a great job. We got to help police cadets who were distressed, lonely, suicidal, all kinds of stuff. One day, one of those cadets walks into my office because he was lonely and he liked to speak with me. I had, of course, a translator, an Arabic translator, a Jordanian translator. And he says, Mr. Paul, there's going to be an attack on the academy and internationals are going to be killed. And I said, well, thank you. And he says, well, the attack is going to come from within. I don't know when. And so I went to our security department who had already heard of it. I believe even Canadian contingency had heard about it. But when you're on mission, you cannot go home. It's not like, hey, there's going to be danger here. So I think I'll just take the next plane.
I'm going to skedaddle. Yeah, I'm going to get
That's it. That's it. No. You know what? We're talking about, that bravery that every one of our soldiers has to face every day. And I had to pull on that bravery and remind myself, number one, what I'm doing here. Okay, this is it. Don't get scared now, Nadeau. It's part of the job. Just be alert. About 3 or 4 days later, I had arrived at the academy very early because that was my job. I had to arrive before the other instructors. We didn't live on the academy grounds. We drove in from Amman to this private, this secret academy in the middle of the desert. It wasn't so secret. You could see it from the street. We were thought a missile was going to come in and just blow us up. That would have been headlines for Al-Qaeda. Anyways, 3 or 4 days later, I'm walking from the director's office with my partner, a Finnish officer by the name of Jarmo. Beautiful man. I love this guy. He stands about a foot taller than I, and the sun's just coming up. Let me paint a picture for you. The sun is just coming up. It is almost 7 o'clock in the morning, and we're walking through the desert, and we're about 250 feet away from our building when from behind another building came about 40 armed cadets, insurgents, who had gathered with rocks and sticks. They didn't have guns, fortunately, but they came and they rushed my partner and I. So there we are standing, surrounded by these cadets who were all yelling and screaming and talking at the same time and ready to bash us open. And I remember my partner kind of looking down at me, and he pats me on the head and he says, "This is going to hurt, little buddy." And I looked up at him and I said, "Yeah, it is." And I had to remind myself of all those lessons. Okay, what do? You face whatever's coming your way and you give it everything you got. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that are not within your control, but what can you control right now, Paul? You can go out fighting. And that was the decision I made. They grabbed us and they started to beat us. And I remember thinking to myself after getting hit, this is it. This is the last day. I'm never going to see my girls again. And that brought a tear to my eye. And I just remember fighting. And as this was going on, as they were kicking and grabbing us, I heard one voice from behind everybody going, "Mr. Paul, Mr. Paul." And he started to shout something in Arabic. And no sooner did he do that, I'm on the ground, I got these stars going on in my head, but everybody moved away from us. And from behind the crowd, when I finally was able to focus and take a look at who had stopped this attack, it was one of the cadets that I had taught in my classroom about 6 weeks earlier. He had not finished his tour. He was one of the terrorists. And he saved my life. He put a stop to that. He walked up. He reached down. He grabbed my arm. He lifted me. Somebody else did that for my partner, Jarmo, and he looks at me and says, "Mr. Paul, it's time for you to go. It's not going to be a good day." And so my partner and I were allowed to leave, and we put a stop to the attack because we alerted all the internationals to stay off the grounds, and we got out with our lives. And so I brought all those lessons that I had learned about the things that I can control, and to not worry about the things I couldn't control, and to make a conscious decision as to what I was going to do in the final moments of my life. So I'm sitting here because a terrorist saved my life. And that is one of the lessons that I bring out to so many people. Because during our pre-interview, Chris, you and I were talking about two of the most important lessons that we, feel that we can share with the world. And the first one that I would like to share is that we are more similar than we are different. No matter what it is, that the person's color of skin, their religious beliefs, their sexual preferences, no matter what, they are more similar to us than we are different. So why don't we treat them the way that we would want to be treated ourselves? Why do we not recognize that this man here saved my life? Why? I think I know why. Because I had treated him with dignity and respect. My second lesson, you get what you give. If you give someone love, compassion, healing, they'll give you love, compassion, and healing in return. If I say, "Hello, Scott, how you doing, man? You doing okay?" You're likely to say the same thing to me. And if I do that with you, Chris, you're likely to do it. But if I go and I give one of you guys a finger and say, "Hey, screw you," you're probably going to do that, or much worse, to me. Why is the world in such division? Why don't we just treat each other the way that we want to